think we need to get it right. I think we need money in. I think we need to then direct that money to export or trade specific sectors of our economy. We need to get our special economic zones going a lot more than what they are right now. We need to explain that to people what these things are. We need to say why people need to be creating businesses in those areas.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We good? Yeah. Oh, we're good. Okay. Welcome, Mr. Wayne Duvenage. Welcome to the So Here's Something Interesting This Week podcast. I think it's so interesting that you find that we are having this conversation right now, because next week we're getting our midterm budget from the finance minister. And the interesting bit about it is that this is normally the time of the year where nobody wants to listen to any politician, funny enough. Yeah. Everybody's worried about, will I have enough for the festive season? It's chaotic, but like controlled chaos in South Africa. Because we were just speaking just off air now about how most people who are running their family budgets are going to, go off into the sunset until maybe mid-Jan. And the next thing you know, we'll already be in 2026.
Yeah. Thanks for inviting me. It's nice to be with you. Yeah,
pleasure.
This is the silly season, and we try and concertina so much work into November, because December everybody's slowing down, and we start the engines again in Jan, sometimes halfway through Jan. So it's busy, but for us, corruption never sleeps. Our work, I can tell you now, we were putting out reports on the 4th of January this year, earlier the year, meeting with whistleblowers in December between Christmas and New Year, our investigators. And that's when, funnily enough, a lot of stuff starts to happen, because government, or those within government who are practicing nefarious activities, tend to sign big contracts on the 14th and 15th of December, and then it gets leaked, and then we're running around asking questions. Everybody says, no, they're on leave. Meanwhile, so we don't stop.
So maybe for people who are watching this and it's the first time that they're actually putting a face to a name, because a lot of people will have heard you on radio, some will have seen you on television, etc. But now we want, as alternative media, to also give a perspective and kind of give a platform to these type of conversations so that we can reach younger people. A lot of our audience is black middle class, between the ages of about 18 to, I think, 45, some even 50, who are watching this. And I think it's important to kind of unpack for us what OUTA is, right? Who you are and why the organization started and what its work is.
Yeah, okay, thanks for that. So OUTA stands for the Organization Undoing Tax Abuse, but the original acronym stood for the Opposition to Urban Tolling Alliance. Yeah. And we changed the memorandum of incorporation of the business in 2016, because up until then, we were born in 2012, and it was on a one-issue matter, which was government's decision, very irrational decision, to introduce an e-tolling scheme in Gauteng. We weren't against the technology, we weren't against the principle of user pays, all of that we understand. But we did our research, and I was wearing a business hat in those days as the chief executive at Avis and heading up the Car Rental Association. When Sanral launched this plan, we had to, because it had an impact on our business heavily. And the more we engage with them to find solutions for how it's going to impact not as negatively as it was at the time, the more we could see that this scheme was born in sin. Let me tell you, it had all the conditions and red flags for corruption, for maladministration, for misappropriation of funds, and the rest is history. I mean, internationally, the administration cost of e-tolling schemes is around 10%. This one was at 30%, and it was getting worse the more we dug. So long story short, we could do one of two things. We could look away, we could carry on doing business and try and fudge this thing into our systems, or we could challenge government, because government needed to be challenged on this decision. They were going to become, and other people were going to become, the beneficiaries of a very deceitful scheme, quite frankly. So we set out to challenge it. Firstly, try to engage for a whole year with Sanral and try to challenge, and they wouldn't listen. So we challenged it in court. Won the interdict, lost the review, but that was fine. We said, the courts opened the door and said, well, you can launch a collateral challenge. It gets quite technical in the legal sense. If we took a lot of guidance from Gilbert Marcus, our senior counsel, who told us how the Group Areas Act and the past laws were fought through irrational laws. These are irrational laws. You've got to fight them. You know, if a law doesn't suit the people and the needs of the people and is not in the best interest of the people, it is an irrational law and needs to be challenged. So we had to start the civil disobedience campaign. Now, in a new democracy, people are saying, what are you doing? Why don't you abide by the law? Why are you fighting the law? Well, the law doesn't get it right all the time. Government doesn't get it right, and they need to be challenged. And that's where it started. And then people were saying about 2016, hey, man, there's so much corruption, and Kandla's headline news, Duvenage, SAA is going down. Why are you just fighting eTOLLS? Why don't you do more than that? So we said, we had a good strategic session. We said, okay, that we hear. We hear you, but we're a civil action organization and we have no money.
Yeah.
We were broke. I mean, the lawyers were just draining our finances. We are funded by the people, by crowdfunding. Small donations from thousands of people make a massive difference. So we said to our supporters out there, okay, I tell you what, we will do as much as we can to fight corruption and to defend every one of you if you're ever summoned by SANRAL. On one condition, we've got funds.
Yeah.
So support us. And we changed our model. We didn't give our bank account out for one-off donations. We said we want to build this organization with professionals. Yeah. We had learned that we didn't want to make lawyers rich. Mm-hmm. We had to pay market-related salaries if you're going to get professionals. Yeah, and to do that, you've got to build systems. You've got to have governance. You've got to have computers. You've got to pay rent. Yeah. So we don't want one-off donations. So if you want to support us, there's the debit order form. You decide: 50 rand a month, 100 rand a month. Average donations 120 rand a month. SMMEs. So we are funded 95% by SMMEs and individuals like you and I. Yeah. And the rest is history. Since then, since 2016, and we changed our acronym to mean Opposition Organization Undoing Tax Abuse, we've done just over 300 projects. Some of them take a week or two. Yeah. Some of them take 6 years. One of those projects took 6 years and cost us 6 million rand to have Duvenage declared delinquent as a director. So, and it's all aimed at trying to ensure that people in positions of authority of our public funds do not waste that money. There's reduced maladministration, and when there's corruption, we go after those people. Yeah. We light the fire in the kitchen. We lay charges. We have them declared delinquent if need be. We expose them, and we make their lives difficult to the extent that they get fired or removed from those positions and then held accountable.
Just to maybe give people also a little bit of understanding, how does OUTA choose what it goes after? How do you choose those projects? Is it a board decision? Is it sort of like a project by project case where people will say, look, I think at this municipality or at this department there's something that's off, right? Do they then submit as a whistleblower? Then you guys look at it, review it, and then what is the process of picking those projects and cases that you go after as OUTA?
Great, nice question. So we've got a team of 45. So we've got an EXCO, we've got an accountability division, and in that we've got an anti-corruption division, a legal division, and a parliamentary engagement department. These are departments, sorry. And then we've got a communications department, very, very important. I promise you now. We've got about 8 people out of 45 in comms alone, comms and marketing, and one wonders, especially in NGO, why so many? But you have to get the narrative right. You have to use social media properly. You have to draft your media statements properly and reports properly, annual reports. So it's very important to get the narrative right. And when you own the narrative, the issue, everybody has to answer to that. So how we choose our projects is we've got a methodology. It's a 5-step methodology. The first thing we do is we investigate the issue, and the issues normally come to us from whistleblowers. So we've got a platform it's a very safe platform. It's housed offshore. It's developed so that you can come anonymously into that platform. We will never know who you are, and you can give us the facts, and we walk you through the process. We tell whistleblowers, be careful what you're doing. Make sure you're entering into a space now that can be dangerous. You can lose your job. So be careful.
Sometimes even your life.
Yeah, and your life. Yeah. So give us, but what we don't want is hearsay. Yeah. What we don't want is a little bit of facts. It needs to be, is this substantial? We're not going to chase an issue where someone stolen a ream of paper from the department. We have to chase things that are substantial, and we got evidence. If we get evidence of corruption, and it's put into our system, then we have to investigate it and make sure that it's correct. What is it? Is it in our mandate? And it's across the board, whether it's in health, education, roads, transport, energy sector, whatever. But it needs to be around state funds. The funds that are meant for running the country and not for people's pockets. And our next step in the methodology then after investigation is to engage the powers. So we go back to them and we say, tell us about this. Is there something we don't understand? 9 times out of 10, they fob us off. They ignore us. And we need more information. We ask them, they ignore us. Then we have to go through a PIA application. And then we have to go to court sometimes to get this information. So because there's just lack of transparency. So once we engage the powers, give them the opportunity to explain themselves. And sometimes, by the way, that works. We've had some ministers who, or heads of department who said, gee, we didn't know that. Thanks for informing us. And they rectify it. I mean, those are nice cases. They're very quick. And we see the change in behavior and the case is over. And then if nothing happens, we expose the issue, we start mobilizing. Mobilizing is a bit of protest action, but it's also mobilizing other oversight entities within those departments, the bosses, the COGTA, Treasury, the public protector, and all
the
of
oversight institutions.
Yeah, and then the last step, and we always need to go there, but we don't always get there because it's very costly. But we will go there if we have to, and that is litigation. We will take them to court. We will. So the car power ships, for instance, where they made this decision, a grossly irrational decision, we said we're going to court. We want this information that you don't want to give us, and we locked that thing up in court. Thank goodness. Because if government had its way and we weren't challenging them, we would have 3 ships in our harbors now pumping 1,200 megawatts of energy into the system that we didn't need, very expensive energy. So this is the type of stuff.
Was that $2 billion a month contract? How much was it per year?
It was going to be about, they say, 200 billion over 20 years. But before you wipe the sleep out of your eyes, that's going to be a 400 billion over 20 years. Because it's fluctuating with the
non-firm pricing,
gas costs, and you get locked in. You got to buy it once they signed that deal. Whether we were, and here we are, no load shedding. We didn't need this energy. We would have had to buy it from them.
So it was
billions and billions of rands.
Very interesting. I want to understand how much the public, I'd say, perception of OUTA has shifted, changed, evolved from when you started till now. What has changed relative to how people see you, how public institutions see you, and I think how corporate South Africa sees you, and how important is that perception to the work that you do?
Well, it's very important. I think a lot of people, especially corporates, misunderstand our role. So in a nutshell, I think we meant everything to Gauteng motorists with the startup from 2012 to 2016.
Because of the eTOLLS.
Because of the eTOLLS. That's all we existed for. And as we transcended, a lot of our supporters who were funding us by then and continue to fund us, even though eTOLLS is gone, because they realize the work that we're doing is good. So they perceive that we've transcended into this space correctly and are happy to continue supporting us. What we have seen is more and more of the small guys, small businesses that understand our role is trying to defend the waste of taxpayers' money, stop that and challenge government. They really, really enjoy it. Big corporates know what we do, they like what we do, but they're very afraid to get involved or engage or support us because their view is that, if government finds out that we are supporting an organization that challenges them, we might get harassed. And let me tell you, at the start, government bullies a big business. They've got board members, they've got people connected at the top that sit on the big companies' boards who instruct them. You can't, and I've seen the mails right in the beginning when business was, because I was in business and got them to fund that court case. I've seen the mails from government right from the top saying to these big businesses, if you continue to support OUTA, we will make sure that you are not on the procurement lists of government. And that's threatening, and that's bullying, and that's how our funding dried up from big business. In the public sector, there are a lot of good people, a lot of excellent people that work in government and local government and provincial, national, that love our work because they know that the money is being wasted. And it's that handful of people in this country that steal from us you and I. They take our money because they set up the networks with connected people from the top in these various departments, and they siphon the funds. They hate us, but that's fine. We don't mind that because we go after them.
Let's have a conversation around the landscape of corruption in South Africa for better understanding for the average person. I think at times corruption in this country it's very macro. People are always talking about it as this thing that happens elsewhere, that is spoken about on television, and there is a disconnect with the real effects of corruption. Yes, from time to time, people do see that there was meant to be a road here and it's not there, or a school's not built, etc. But there is a compounding interest cost to corruption. And I always make the simple example. You may have stolen a 5-kilometer road that was meant to be fixed that was worth 80 million rand. But what is the cost, the economic cost of that road not being done properly for the long term? What is the cost per year of that road not being built, not being maintained, etc.? Yes, the initial cost was 80 million, but what about the trucks that have to now divert? What about the businesses in the area that get less traffic or are not able to operate? What about the societal cost of that? So I think give us an understanding of the landscape of corruption in South Africa, the big numbers, firstly. Because we always have these conversations with people and nobody can actually get some of those facts. And you guys sit almost at the center of all of this, understanding, getting this information. So give us an understanding of where we are in South Africa in relative to corruption, some of the lists that we're on globally, and where we're sitting, and what would be a good sort of result in the next 10 years from the work that you guys do as part of civic society, but also from just a better run state. And also, what is the human cost of it?
I mean, that's very wide. And let me try and answer it this way. We have enough money to run this country properly and be world class. We have enough, I promise you. It's just that there's too much that is wasted. So the average that we've seen when it comes to a road construction project, I'm talking provincial and local government largely, but it also happened on the Gauteng Freeway project, by the way, where SANRAL is very good in its engineering, they build good roads. But this 186-kilometer upgrade, in their own books earlier, their own sums and figures that they'd put out, should not have cost more than 6 billion rand. They paid 18 billion rand for an upgrade, not new roads, a bit of extra lane here, one extra lane, and a few bridges and flyovers and interchanges were upgraded. And 18 billion shouldn't have cost more than 6. Okay, so let's park that. What we've seen is that we are getting 1 kilometer for every 3 kilometers we pay for. In other words, every time we're spending on infrastructure and road construction in this country, we could have got 3 kilometers for what we paid, what we got 1.
That's insane.
Now that's mad. And the same thing goes for RDP housing. The same thing goes for building schools, clinics, running hospitals. There are so many middlemen that are eating off those revenue flows. And you know the Tembisa Hospital, and you know the Babita Diakron thing. Services SETA. Let's just talk a little bit about SETAs. There's a cesspool of corruption throughout higher education. And this is all during Bladen Zamande's days. And I say his name loudly because he's the central figure in so much of what we see going wrong. So NSFAS, we had to expose what was going on there. And the simple thing is that the businesses, and you and I, we pay skills development levies. It's a good idea. This is supposed to uplift the youth.
Internships, etc.
Lovely stuff. And yet there's so much money there that the SETAs, the Sectoral Education Training Authorities, 21 of them, a lot of those, not all 21, a lot of those, that money is diverted. It is used for instance, QI Solutions comes along and says, hey, we've got a good idea. We'll upgrade your systems where people and learners developments are managed through. They had no problem with the first one. And they go and INSETA goes and introduces the QI solution system for 23 million rand. Doesn't cost that much. And then the next SETA says, oh, we'll have that as well. It's the same system. Oh, you'll also pay 23. And all the development's done in the first one. And so this company gets 4 or 5 contracts to change a system that wasn't broken
For the same system.
For the same system that doesn't work, by the way. You ask those seaters, now, how's it going? Well, it's failing. Why did you change? And so you start seeing what's happening. And then inside that, when some of the learner companies raise their hands and says, excuse me, but a learner's not even getting their certificates, and we see ghost learners in the system, and what does the management do? They de-accredit those companies because they're asking tough questions and exposing their corruption and maladministration, and those companies now collapse. Hundreds of people lose their jobs. This is the type of thing that is happening. It's hard to measure, but it's across local government, in municipalities, and that's why they collapse. That's why we have raw sewage pouring into rivers, because no maintenance is done on wastewater treatment plants. People downstream suffer. Businesses downstream suffer. You know, in Mogale City, that Percy Stewart wastewater treatment plant, raw sewage going through the cradle of humankind, a World Heritage Site. Businesses are closing because you used to be able to
fish. You can't operate in that environment. You can't.
You just can't. And so it's so wide scale. We've got a lot of work to do now. The new government that has come in under the 7th administration, new ministers, we can see there's an appetite to clean up. But the tentacles and the networks and the syndicates that have infiltrated so many of these departments are so big that it's going to take a lot of work, and we're going to have to fight it. And that's why I talk about we have to fight corruption in the way that the syndicates are fighting back, and it's hard work. And if we don't do this, if I'm looking forward to the MTBPS next week, because what we want to see government is start to allocate funds to the criminal justice system. How do you cut the NPA's budget, but you increase the blue lights and VIP protection budget? I mean, that's madness. It's madness.
Makes no sense. And that's where a lot of, I'd say, there's a lot of contradiction with that, because a lot of the parties that have come into the GNU, smaller parties, opposition parties, etc., a lot of their pre-election rhetoric was around less government spending, but some of them came in and said, we would like 2 deputy ministers, we would like 2 of these. So that was a bit contradictory. But as you're speaking, one of the things that became apparent to me is that I have this understanding and analogy of corruption in just wider society, but specifically in South Africa, where the cost of corruption is always understated because nobody is able to be found accountable. So let me give you a very simple conversation around legal funding. A friend of mine had a conversation around what it would take to litigate a supplier that was not paying them and should have paid them. Just a simple commercial dispute, etc. His legal advisor said, if you were to place this and take this to court and put it on the roll and say you'd like the court, because it's over 450,000, we've got to take it to a high court, etc. Because of this amount, your case would be heard in 2027. I said that can't be. We're not talking about how the legal system in South Africa has been defunded to a point where it's crippled.
Yeah, it is.
Now, when it comes to how government departments are funded and what you have seen, what is causing a lot of this overspending that we're seeing in government, and relative to how, and I'm almost certain that you are connected to global organizations who are fighting corruption globally, how does South Africa fare when it comes to how we're seen from a corruption perspective globally, and that being relative to foreign direct investment?
Well, it does affect us because international investors, there's so much potential here, but they're a bit hesitant because we do rank 83, I think, out of 180 countries in the global, in the Transparency Index as Corruption Perception Index, Transparency International. So they do this survey and this research every year, and it's a perception. It comes from you and I, the people, and it's what we see, and it's not getting any better. And so big businesses are a bit reluctant to do business here. So let's say you want to come in and acquire a company here or partnership. you got to be sure that that company's clean.
Yeah.
In other words, if we buy into this business, we don't want to read in 2 years' time that there was a deal done. So think of EOH and companies like that who've had a tough time trying to recover because of their dealings with government and getting business. And there are a lot of business is the other side of the corruption coin. And when it comes to state spending, you must understand they're not. They're also guilty.
Yeah.
And so that's where a lot of this work has to happen is to get the corporate sector who has the skills and provides the services to say, stop looking away. Stop accepting that there's middleman fees and hiding these as business development costs. Because we hear that very often. There's guys doing a deal with government. Tenders are written to favor certain companies, and those people mark up their prices and put it down to business development because there's a facilitator involved and there's funds being transferred. That's corruption. In fact, I think in Canada and a couple of countries, what they call it, facilitation fees and or middleman fees,
intermediary fees.
Yeah, they are regarded as corruption. If you pay those fees, you are corrupt, and they'll go after you. We need to introduce that type of law here.
Let's talk about corporate corruption because there is a linkage, as you've, I'd say, placed it. There is another side of the coin. In order for there to be corruption, there needs to be a business element or a corporate element. Now, in a lot of the, I would say, investigations, projects that you guys have undertaken from, I'd say, from a corruption, fact-finding and litigation perspective, what have you seen as the role that corporate South Africa has been playing in corruption in South Africa? And what are some of those findings where when you get to the other side and you say, maybe this department, this municipality has been corrupt, but on the other side, there's big business. What are some of those findings that you're seeing?
So very often, most of the times, not big corporates, but there are some, and I'll talk to you a bit about that. But what happens is they will set up a quick company through friends and family. So you'll see the recent registration numbers. They'll manipulate the tenders in the bid evaluation committee process. I'll give you one classic example, the recent driver's license card account, which we're seeing, and the Auditor General is investigating it now. Fortunately, it's not been signed until that's happened, but the Department of Transport did announce IDEMIA as the company. So modus operandi is this. Very often it's put it out for tender, see how many people, you get the request for interest, you start gauging the landscape, and then you start saying, okay, you go and introduce yourselves to people and say, right, we can manipulate this process, you will get it, but this is what you have to do, and then the tender's cancelled. You've got a lot of information, you've got pricing in, then you put it out again, you might cancel again. The driver's license card account was cancelled twice, and then eventually, and by then, there were 25 companies that expressed interest. Only 5 ended up tendering, and the last tender, the others just got fed up because of this manipulation of the process. It's very costly, time-consuming. Out of those 5, you knock the other 4 out because they don't qualify for this or that. Technical stuff, and then one man standing, inflated prices. That's a typical case, and that's a big company. It's a French company. That French company's name is going to be tainted here. And in fact, if this is the case, and it was found, they were found guilty and contracts cancelled with AXA just a couple of months ago, they should be on the restricted suppliers database.
Same company.
Yeah. Same company doing business with another Department of Transport company, AXA.
Yeah. And
this is now dealing with a driver's license. That company's name, by the way, should find its way onto Treasury's restricted supplier database. It doesn't. It doesn't. There's a lot of corrupt companies. And so IDEMIA might be doing a tender in another province. They don't see what's going on.
There's no list.
Basically. It's just, there is a list. It's supposed to be updated. It isn't. But so often, these companies don't exist, or they exist as shelf companies, and they get created very quickly to start spending money to win these tenders. So it's not necessarily big corporates, but there are big players that are involved sometimes. Look at the construction companies. Eventually they were found guilty, by the way, of inflating the prices of this road, Gauteng road upgrade, of collusion. And they had to pay a fine. It was a slap on the wrist, really.
Yes.
But our beef is with Sanroll, because we were saying to them, but hold on. How did they pull? They blamed the collusion in the companies, in the construction companies. No. They can't collude without you knowing that.
Yeah.
When I was running Avis, if the 3 or 4 windscreen companies colluded to push the prices up, we'd say, what are you doing here? You will not have 15, 20, 30% increases per annum.
Across all the suppliers.
You manage your suppliers like that. You bring in others. You import if you need to. If I was Nazir Ali at Sanro when that was happening, I would have said, if you guys carry on like this, because we know the price of road construction, if this 3 times the price is starting to happen, we will bring in international people to build these roads. So, don't ruin it for the long term for yourselves and for this country. But they looked away. And that's what happens in government. They look away because they know what's happening. And they're guilty. They're guilty as far as we're concerned. So this stuff is happening where mom and pop shops, and if you look at the reports on the services SETA, how these companies, they just change names, the same director, set up another company, follow Andile Nongogo to Nesfa, same deals are being done. 300 million rand we have paid to companies that should never have got a cent out of us. And when we follow that money, and we see that money didn't go into businesses paying salaries, it went into cars, properties, houses. Your money and my money has enriched. And guess what? To your point earlier, no one is held accountable. And that's our biggest challenge in corruption in this country, are the consequences. There's a formula for corruption.
Yeah.
You know that. Corruption happens when the gains exceed the fines or the penalties multiplied by the likelihood of being caught. And if the likelihood of being caught is low, you're going to be corrupt, because it's so easy to take money out of the system.
Because you can afford the penalties.
Yeah, and even if I'm caught, like we've caught people and shown the authorities, there it is, nothing happens. Well, now why? Now you've got to ask why. Right to the top, you say, but your role now is to lay the charges. You know what's gone wrong. We've given you the evidence, is to not just fire them, lay the charges, go after them, make sure they get put in jail, because you've got all the contracts, you've got the minutes of the meetings, you've got and they look away. Well, because they're involved.
So do we have, or should we have a corruption court in South Africa?
Now you're getting to
a specific court, like what we did momentarily for crimes during 2010. We had specialized crime courts, where these courts were just there to listen to these particular cases. So do you think that's an avenue that South Africa should probably go?
Spot on. So I said earlier on, the MTBPS, and what we're saying to government is, look, if you as government, and you, Mr. President Ramaphosa, have said, we all say, if you look at all the risk reports of big business, one of the biggest risks is corruption. It's holding us back. It's costing us money. It's becoming endemic. We've got to fight it. So if that's a crisis, in this country, then treat it as a crisis. We had an electricity crisis. We had an electricity minister put in. Maybe we need a corruption minister, but maybe I'm going a bit overboard. But what you're talking about is 100% correct. If we tackled corruption as a crisis, we would have corruption courts, and because you need judges who understand money flows and corruption. It's not an easy thing, and because the corrupt will bring the best lawyers, and when you confuse a judge, you start to win. So we need the best investigators. We need collaboration between SIU, SARS. SARS is a big component. We believe that SARS has a bigger role to play, but it has to build this anti-corruption unit inside and get this information and challenge the illicit flows and the illegal trading that's taking place. And they've got all the systems to do that. And you bring SIU, Hawks, NPA, the Investigating Directorate, and SARS here, those 5 units, to work closer with an anti-corruption dedicated unit and corruption courts. I can tell you now, if you spend 10 billion rand there per annum, you'll get 100 billion rand back, 10 times that back as a country. That'll flow into government's coffers, because the illicit trade of stuff that's coming in under the radar, where no excise duties are being paid, that'll stop. The illicit trade of cigarettes will stop. The economy will grow. The confidence in the economy will start to take place. People will start investing here. It's a no-brainer. So your question's a perfectly correct one. That's what we need.
So if I'm understanding, not a corruption minister, but get somebody at a very high level, executive level, ministerial level, to head up corruption. Get the courts get corruption court sorted out, closer cooperation from the operational guys on the ground, the SIUs, the AFUs, etc.
Working together.
And then you can start to sort a lot of things out.
A lot of things out, and we will then start dealing with corruption properly. If we did that, I've no doubt that we'll win this war. We won't win it if we just keep the NPA where they are, undercapacitated. And we don't win it, by the way. I'm not a fan for throwing people at the problem. It's like the previous Minister of Police, now we're going to throw more boots on the ground. You don't throw boots on the ground.
Yeah.
You put a strategy in place, and then you build the structure of expertise and systems that deals with that. And I'm telling you now, the international entities are here to help us with systems, with all the way they've tackled this stuff overseas. So there's a lot of good work that can be done, but we're not going to do it unless we take this seriously and do this type of work and this type of spending.
As we wind down, I want to have another conversation around, for instance, a case like Steinhoff. We're starting to see a lot of, I'd say, prosecutions happened, a lot more conversations around consequences for what happened. Maybe give me understanding. In that case where public funds through entities like the PIC, etc., were involved in this, would OUTA not be part and parcel of some of those things? Has anything ever come out where people are saying, hey, look, I was part of this thing, etc.? I know you can't obviously let us know around that, but was there an opportunity for you to be involved? Were you involved in some of the Steinhoff investigations?
No, we weren't, because that's a public company's corruption that's taking place, the police and the commercial crimes courts, and they did a good job, which is why they got to where they are. PIC is an entity that's investing in that space. What we're dealing with, and our mandate's very clear, we deal with the funds that taxpayers pay into the government coffers.
Understood.
And then that goes out, whereas PIC is taking its government pension money and investing it in businesses, and they've invested maybe in KPMG. And those areas, we will tackle KPMG or McKinsey and those companies because they were directly involved in corruption within the state sector's money. So we believe the shareholders of big business are the ones that will expose the corruption and deal with them. And that's what happened at Steinhoff. That's what happened at Tongaat. They tackled those companies. But the shareholders in government's money is you and I. And that's why we've got to tackle it in the way we do.
100%. And basically, in closing, do you are there any big cases that you guys are going to drop on us before the end of the year? Or do we go quietly into this good night and see you in 2025? Yeah,
look, there's a lot of stuff that we're working on with whistleblowers in various government departments. So we'll expose those as we go along. We get recordings of conversations, and that's what happened in January, why Ernest Khoza, and by the way, Ernest Khoza, who was the chairperson of NSFAS, had to eventually resign. If he didn't, he was going to have to be fired for what we were exposing. So he resigns. But guess what? He's still on the board of the Aviation Authority, Civil Aviation Authority in South Africa. And so there's just too much of this. There aren't enough serious consequences. So, we'll continue to expose and put out more reports. A lot of people don't see what we're doing. As I said, 300 projects since 2016. You'll see the big ones here and now, but there's a lot of small projects that are being undertaken.
Mr. Wayne Duvenage, thank you for your time. I think you've illuminated a lot more than what I was expecting, and I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for your expertise, giving us an understanding of some of the intricacies that go into how corruption actually happens, but also at the same time the lack of consequences that we find and what we could do to change a lot of that. So thank you for your time, and I hope that everybody who watched this found it very interesting. And
thanks,
continue the good work.
Thank you for your time as well. It's been an interesting discussion.
Cheers.
Thanks a lot. Cheers.
Happiness, 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 happiness.